Good afternoon, parents and caregivers, and welcome to my newsletter for week 9, the second last week of term 2. I just wanted to start with a little bit of a philosophical look at a couple of things I've been dealing with lately to begin with. And it's really around school culture, and it's really around school culture when the students leave the college as well. Someone asked me recently, how would you like to describe your own culture? And I've always said I'd like to have a culture of welcome, but never a culture of tribalism. And they asked me to explain the difference. For me, a culture of welcome is you welcome those who are different, you welcome those who are not like you, and you actually welcome other schools and other groups into your community for sport and other activities. So there's a sense of welcome to other schools, to outsiders, to people who are different than yourself. Tribalism for me is a sense of exclusion. So one community is better than another. It's superior, and that can permeate in many poor ways. And sometimes school cultures which are seen as strong actually have a sense of tribalism and exclusion. It's my hope that at Laurie's we always have that sense of welcome. You might ask, why was I thinking about that? The class of 2019 were to have a function here after they've left school. Now that's something we've instigated because boys often lose their way a little bit after they leave year 12 because the structures aren't there at university and maybe the workplace or in tertiary study that they once had when they were at school. And some boys get a little bit lost over that time. So when I was reflecting on that, I was saying to the boys, we'd like to welcome you back and always welcome you back into our community. And then I was speaking with the communications team about the class of 1963. This class meets at least 4 times a year. So they were the senior class of 1963. They come for our Anzac Day ceremonies when people are allowed into the college. And they're a special group of men. But they talk about the connections they made at school and how important they've been throughout their life. And for me, that's a real hope for any student leaving this college, that they have that sense of connection. Indeed, I've been doing a number of enrolment interviews over the last few weeks, and that has been stated that Laurie's always has a sense of connection with classmates when they leave the college. And I hope that continues into the future. One of the things I also talk about is a value of service from members of the community serving others. And you may have seen on the Channel 7 news the story of Ben Marks and his accident, which has been well documented. But the quote or the words that I really enjoyed hearing was when Ben said, "Without my mates, I probably would have died. They stuck by me during the time." I hope that's something we teach our boys, and I hope it's a selfless thought as well. So just to start the newsletter, I'd like to talk about and reinforce those ideas that we are a welcome community. We never knock other communities, and we're not superior to any other community, but we know we're special. Just around enrolments, which I was leading towards with some of those statements, is I've been doing a number of enrolment interviews this term, significantly more than normal. I will say that year 7 for next year is chock-a-block, and we've actually enrolled a few extras. And I hope that if you have a son who is in year 6 that you have made that enrolment. We currently have no places available, but of course if there's a sibling who's been missed, we're open to a discussion. So numbers are extremely strong for next year. I've been doing interviews predominantly for 2022 at the moment. So this is year 7 at the moment, and again, the numbers are very solid there. I'd ask if you haven't applied that happens immediately, because most offers have been made at this point. And I have a waiting list, but I still have a couple of vacancies available there as well. If you are a prospective year 5 2022 parent, we'll be doing those interviews next term with offers made at the end of term 3. That's consistent with schools like us, like Villanova, St Joseph's Gregory Terrace, Padua, Iona, those types of schools that are year 5 to 12 schools. That's our agreement, and we'll be sticking to that. So if you haven't applied and you wish to, please do it as soon as possible. And you may even want to put an expression of interest in for 2023. That's always prudent. This term as well, this week, we've been assessing all calendar events for next term. Now, the problem with making decisions is we know that guidelines can change almost overnight. But we'll give you the undertaking, we're trying to have as normal a year as is possible. So we've been looking at things like school camps. We've been looking at formals and semi-formals. We've been looking at a number of activities that involve parents coming on site. It's our hope to return to those as soon as it's recommended we can do that. As soon as we're able to do, we will. So because the experience of the boys is the forefront of our thoughts, and the connections with our parents is also extremely important. Year 10 are currently on exam block, and I wish them well, and I hope that they've used the time well. There's been some changes with exam blocks for those parents that have been with us for some time. With the old system, we often had an extensive exam block period because we had a lot more assessment. With the newer system, there's less assessment, and there's no longer the need for long exam blocks. It means the boys are in class longer and they have less time in exam and assessment at the college at the moment, and that's consistent with all schools in Queensland. Next term we'll be moving to a couple of online presentations. I'd like to talk about parent-teacher interviews, where Natalie Casey through the admins team is currently working on a process for online parent-teacher interviews involving technology. Now, information will come out to you very, very early next term, indeed potentially over the holidays, about how to do that. And it's our hope that this can go smoothly and well, because we do want you involved in your son's learning. The other things that we are doing is subject selections. So Year 7 students choosing subjects for Year 8 next year, and Year 9 students choosing subjects for Year 10 next year will have an online subject selection evening, which we've currently prepared for. So that'll be sent to all parents. The only downside of that is you can't have the conversation at the time. And we encourage you to either email or contact staff if you have further queries. I will say that sometimes the Year 8 subject selection is not seen as significant. It is, because if bad habits are there in Year 8, seldom do you get good outcomes in Year 12. So we need the boys choosing well, choosing what they'd like to do and what they're successful in Year 8. And for Year 10, so the Year 9 boys, they'll be choosing their senior subjects for those 3 years. And it's very important that a lot of due consideration has been given to those. Next week will be our final online newsletter. I will do 2 every term, so in term 3 and term 4, regardless of the restrictions, but we'll move back to a written newsletter. I thank everyone for their patience and their engagement with these newsletters, but we'll continue to do our best to make sure that you're fully informed. Enjoy the final week of term next week.